What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be doing a book review of Ashes of Man by Christopher Rocchio. Yeah, this is book number 5 in the Sun Eater saga. So before we get into anything else, I do want to preface this entire video by saying this is book 5 in the series, so there's going to be very mild spoilers here. So if you haven't started any of these and you don't want any type of spoiler whatsoever of who may or may not make it, those kind of things, then I would say, yeah, maybe add this to your watch later list and come back to it when you're either caught up to it or you've already read it and you want to know my thoughts. But otherwise, aside from like the small things like naming certain characters that are in the book, and that could be a giveaway for some things, but aside from that, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. So without any further ado, let's first jump into what is this book about. The galaxy is burning. With the Cielson united under one banner, the Solan Empire stands alone after the betrayal of the Commonwealth. The prophet king of the Cielson has sent its armies to burn the worlds of men, and worse, there are rumors, whispers, that Hadrian Marlowe is dead, killed in the fighting. But it is not so. Hadrian survived with the help of the witch Valka, and together they escaped the net of the enemy, having learned a terrible truth, that the gods that the Cielson worship are real and will not rest until the universe is dark and cold. What is more, the emperor himself is in danger. The prophet king has learned to track his movements as he travels along the borders of imperial space. Now, the Cielson legions are closing in, their swords poised to strike off the head of all mankind. Alright guys, for those of you who are new to the channel, the way that I normally break down my reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things that I didn't like so much, and these are preferential things. These are things like maybe a character I didn't like, or the prose, or maybe a setting that just maybe didn't work so well for me. But then I go into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And I break that down into 5 categories, and I rate them out of 10. But before we get into that, let's first jump into the good. What are some things about this book that I enjoyed? And the answer is almost everything. Now, spoiler alert, this is my new favorite in the series. And I have heard that that is actually an unpopular opinion because this was actually supposed to be the latter half of Kingdoms of Death. But then because of publishing issues and things, it had to be split into 2 parts. But let me just go ahead and say, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. And the reason is because I've mentioned before that I am a moments reader. I love the big epic moments in a book. I will read 400 or 500 pages in a book for that one really impactful moment. And boy, oh boy, does this book have them. So with the other books, without giving any spoilers away, with the other books, we did see those moments all throughout the series. But for each book, you almost had that one big moment. You know, people talk about Brandon Sanderson's Sanderlanche. It doesn't even compare to some of the stuff that Christopher Rocchio has written, in my opinion. But with that being said, with Empire of Silence, you sort of had this one big event. With Howling Dark, you sort of had this one big event. With Demon in White, you sort of had this one big event, so on and so forth. And even with Kingdoms of Death, there were other larger events, and like Demon in White had a couple of, it almost seemed like it was in 2 separate arcs in one book. But with this book, man, there are moments strung all throughout this book. So let me just go ahead and say that the first couple of chapters of this book like wrecked me. Absolutely wrecked me. I understand that this was actually added to the story so that there would be a definitive ending point for Kingdoms of Death and a jumping off point for Ashes of Man. And I'm actually so glad that it's in there because this book would not have hit me the same way if that one big event at the end of Kingdoms of Death and beginning of Ashes of Man was excluded. So that was phenomenal. And then there were several other of those moments. This is maybe a light spoiler. When Hadrian met with Alexander, for those of you who've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that haven't, this isn't going to give anything away. This you just know Alexander's there. But Hadrian's discussion with Alexander was one of the most impactful moments I've ever read in any book as far as fiction goes. Man, it was just I don't know. I was at a loss for words. I caught myself getting really misty eyed. The only reason why tears weren't streaming down my face is because I was making sure they weren't. You know, it's like, I'm not crying, I'm just sweating from my eyes. Because that was a really, really heavy scene. And man, to see the themes of redemption and forgiveness in this book were just second to none, in my opinion. So that was, man, that really hit me. And then so it really primed me for the events afterward. And let me just say, like the last 5 to 10 chapters of this book, I was like misty-eyed the whole time. I was misty-eyed. I was blown away. I was like mad. I was getting ready to like flip tables. For those of you that have read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There were things that took place in this book, and I was just like, I had to text several of my friends over on Instagram and YouTube and stuff and tell them like as I'm reading it, I'm giving them live updates, and I'm like, I'm not trying to bombard you, but what? And there's no, and this, and what? And then I'm like, yes. And then I'm like, I mean, it was all within a matter of like less than 30 to 45 minutes. The moments in this book, it was like Christopher Rocchio knew what I was looking for in a book, and I got it here. The other stuff I won't get into too heavy because you've probably heard me say it about the other books. Characters obviously are great. The setting, again, we have that sort of where we're hopping around a little bit, so it never gets stagnant, in my opinion. To me, it just worked. All of it just worked. Character, plot, setting, obviously the pacing it's the tightest it's ever been in this book. I will say that the plot, again, it's what you're reading the story for. And it's crazy because you already know what happens at the very end. The very first page of Empire of Silence, you know what happens in this story. And he reminds the reader constantly. And so there's never an instance where you're like, does Hadrian make it out? Because you already know that he does, because he's the one writing the story. However, Christopher Rocchio is such an excellent writer that there's things going on and I'm like, man, I hope Hadrian makes it, even though he's the one telling me the story. It's so well done. This is turning into an absolute masterpiece as far as the series goes. I mean, it's not like it wasn't already, but I can't see how he keeps raising the bar, keeps elevating the standard for me, but he does. And from what I understand, the next book is, pretty much everybody I've talked to has said Disquiet Gods is going to be my favorite book, hands down. So really looking forward to that. So this leads me into the bad. What were some things about this book that I didn't enjoy? And I'm happy to say there's like almost nothing. There were a couple of things that irked me and didn't pull me out of the story, but it just sort of, I was like, ugh. But they were intentionally written that way. So number one is there are a couple of times where we really slow down, where the pacing, I mean, it really comes almost to a halt, because you're dealing with a lot of internal turmoil with Hadrian. You're really getting laser focused on Hadrian's struggles, especially after the events of book 4. And that has weighed really heavy on me reading that because, without getting into it very much, like I can empathize with him in some ways, maybe definitely not in the same ways, for those of you who read book 4, but him wrestling with these things, it was, like I said, it was a little bit slower, and I didn't find that I disliked that, but I can see how some people may find that as a detractor for the story. I didn't. But I do want to give you a heads up of what are some things that you might think would fall under the category of the bad. Is there's some slower parts. There's a couple of times where it does seem like we're just kind of like handing off the football to somebody else. It's like, okay, well, we're here, and then we just kind of pass it over here, and then we just but we're never really making any forward progress. That's not the case, in my opinion. But I can see how that argument can be made. I would disagree with it, but at the same time, everybody's reading experience is going to be a little bit different. Other than that, the things that I didn't like about the book were the things that you weren't supposed to like about the book. Like, I am waiting for the day when I can find Alexander and slap him in the face. I mean, it's like I so bad just want to give that guy like a kick to the chin, I mean, like, it has been driving me nuts with him in this story. Not just him. I think his mother needs to use some super glue for chapstick. she drives me up the wall, and she's supposed to, but again, it's not like bad in the sense that it was poorly executed. It was just, they frustrate me to no end. And that shows how good of a writer that Rocchio is, because that is exactly how they are portraying themselves to Hadrian. Whereas the rest of the Solan Empire, they're, bow down, and these are God incarnate basically. But Hadrian is just like, he cannot wait for the day where he can just go and humiliate both of them. And I can't wait for it either. So for me, there wasn't really anything bad in here, but maybe for some of you, I could see how there could be a few things that were like, I wish we would pick the pacing up a little bit. I wish we didn't slow down here and there. But for me, I thought it was top notch. So this leads me into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And again, I break this down into 5 categories, starting with violence and brutality. Now for violence and brutality, I'm going to give this probably another 8. It's high. It's as high as Kingdoms of Death. I'm not going to go too far into all the details of each one of these, because if you've read book 1 and book 2 and you liked it, you're going to like the rest of them. So if that's all you're looking for, yeah. If you like books 1 and 2, you're going to like this one. But the violence and brutality, I wouldn't say it's turned up, but it is definitely laser focused at times. So it's less broad. There was a lot of violence and brutality that took place towards a lot of people in Kingdoms of Death. Whereas this, it's really centralized on a few people, and it can be really, really gruesome. There's one scene in particular with the Duke, the captured Duke. And for those of you that have read this book, you know what I'm talking about. It is just horrific. It is terrifying. I mean, woo, 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 woo. It is a rough scene. I mean, I don't know what else to say. If the entire book was like this, I don't know that I'd be able to finish it, to be honest with you. Because it is, I mean, and Christopher Rocchio put it in there for the right reasons at the right time and did not linger, but it was in there just long enough to really, really make you squirm. And then he gave us that reprieve. But man, that was a hard scene to read. So this leads me to category 2, which is sexually explicit content. Again, I'm gonna give this a 3. I don't really think it's in here. I think there's a mention of Hadrian and Valka being involved. They aren't technically married, but it's because they can't be. I think there's a couple of scenes that are a little more intimate between Hadrian and Valka. They are not explicit in nature at all. I don't think it's enough to cause any of you to put it down, but at the same time, I'm not going to say, well, there's nothing intimate about this book at all. Just a little bit, but it was like really just a little bit. So this brings me to category 3, which is language. And for language, I'm going to give this a 5. I definitely would say there's less language here than in Kingdoms of Death, and for a few reasons, which I won't get into, but it's definitely lessened. But at the same time, it's still present. If you've read the first 4 books and had no problem, you'll love this. If you got to book 4 and you had to put book 4 down, I would understand. But if you've made it this far, you're going to enjoy the rest of the series. Category 4 is going to be gratuitous inclusions, and this is going to be a short one. Again, there's nothing in here, so it's a big fat absolute 0 from me. And the final category is dark themes. Now for dark themes, I'm going to give this an 8. It's pretty high. Predominantly because of that one scene. There are a lot of heavy themes that we have to deal with here. They're all executed excellently, but it can be pretty weighty. There are some spiritual things that are kind of intertwined here in this book. So I don't want to say there's nothing spiritual at all. There are spiritual things in here, but let me get into that in a minute. But the reason why I gave it an 8 is because of the heavy themes here and not necessarily the themes that are spiritual in nature. These are the ones that are like, they're going to weigh on you. They're those horror scenes that might give you a bad dream or two. It can get really high. And that one scene in particular was like, I mean, tip-top horror. So I know that can weigh on your spirit a little bit, but thankfully we don't linger there. But just know when you're getting into this, there's some heavy stuff that takes place. So the final question is, would I recommend this to a Christian? And the answer is absolutely I would. This has become a new favorite series of mine. I mean, it's getting close to being my favorite series of all time, if that tells you anything. This is getting close to usurping Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings for me. and those two are tied. And so that tells you how much I am really loving this series. Yeah, it's just, man, it is, to me, it's perfect up to this point. I will say, for you Christians, there are some spiritual themes in here that promote Christianity in such a strong way that are overt in nature. And for us believers, not only can you not miss them, but they are really going to bring you a sense of hope and encouragement. I have been so blown away by Christopher Rocchio's Christian themes that are woven in this series. This has become, I mean, it is so interwoven in the series that I could see this being labeled as Christian fiction. There are a couple of things in here that I won't get into just for the sake of spoilers, but there's literal scripture quoted in here, and not quoted as in like, ooh, what did this guy say, or out of context kind of thing. This is meant to be in the context in which it was written, and it's straight scripture, word for word, not a summary. It is, I mean, I got to the end of this book, like I have chill bumps right now just thinking about it because of how wrong I was about this series because of my first attempt with book one. And man, it's so good. I mean, I can't rave enough about it. Like, this book is so good, and I have a very good feeling that I am not going to make it through without boo-hooing, because this, man, it's, as of right now, it's to me, it's a perfect series. So would I recommend it to a Christian? Like, not only would I have, and I've purchased a couple of copies for people up to this point. It is just that good. I wouldn't just recommend it to Christians. I push it on them. It really is that excellent. So overall, guys, absolutely loved Ashes of Man. It's my new favorite in the series, and it's going to be very hard for me not to jump right into Disquiet Gods. But I do plan to kind of take a little bit of a break just to have a breather and to get caught up on all the novellas between now and when I read Disquiet Gods, and hopefully I can time it to where I can finish reading Disquiet Gods and jump right into Shadows Upon Time. That's the plan anyway. But yeah, have absolutely loved this series. If you guys have any questions about these books or these series, or you just want to nerd out with me, because I really want to nerd out with you about these books, if you read them, leave me a comment down below. I love talking to you guys. I absolutely will get back to you. Yeah, just leave me a comment down below. But more than anything, guys, would you please share these videos with your Christian brothers and sisters? Not because I want to see the subscriber count go up, which I do appreciate, by the way, or see all the likes and comments, which again, I do appreciate, but it's because it's my goal with this channel that I could be a good resource for my brothers and sisters in Christ. So maybe that we can spend our time, money, and energy a little more wisely on things that honor the Lord, which this book definitely did. So thank you guys again so much for coming and hanging out with me and nerd out about this series. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.